Okay, now we're set. Welcome, Susan. How you doing?
Thanks. Yeah, really good. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Great having you. It's an honor. So today we're so thrilled to have the very famous worldwide phenomenon known as the classification guru, also by her real name, Susan Walsh. So welcome, Susan. Today's
Thank
topic,
you.
great to have you. Today's topic is how to clean dirty data. And the focus is going to be on with an eye towards data science and machine learning. So Susan's going to kick it off in a few minutes. I just wanted to give everyone a quick background, a little bit about Fourth Brain, who we are, what we do. For those of you who aren't aware, some of you have come in for the first time, other have been part of the Fourth Brain community, and we welcome everyone. So a little bit quickly about Fourth Brain. So our mission is to train more people to enter the growing field of machine learning and artificial intelligence. We're trying to bring as many people as possible into the field. Right now, Fourth Brain offers two core programs. Our main program, our flagship program, is called Machine Learning Engineer, which is also our most popular program right now. And we also have an ML Ops program, which is also gaining a lot of popularity. I would say our typical students, it's hard to say what a typical student looks like, but they vary. It could be anywhere from software engineers to music teachers, from financial quants to astrophysics students. We get former CTOs, we get current CTOs. We also get current university students or recent university grads. I would say the one common trait is that they all have a desire and a passion to learn more about artificial intelligence and machine learning. So that's really the underlying common thread that bonds all of the students in our programs. Our programs are also run cohort style, meaning that you're part of a group with other students. It varies, it can be anywhere from 20 to 40 students in a cohort group. You work on projects together with industry partners, and it's really a dynamic and engaging learning experience. One of the most popular parts of the program is the cohort experience, the fact that you're learning with other students. And lastly, I'll just wrap it up by saying this. Fourth Brain is backed by the AI Fund, which was founded by Andrew Ng back in 2017. So we're very proud to be part of that ecosystem of great companies that are all really trying to make a difference in the world of AI and ML. So without further ado, let me just introduce our guest speaker for today, Susan Walsh, also known as the classification guru. And Susan, I will read your spiel. Sorry if this sounds
Okay, go for it.
All right. So with a decade of experience fixing dirty data, Susan Walsh is the classification guru. Susan is founder and managing director of the Classification Guru Limited, a specialist data classification, taxonomy, customization, and data cleansing consultancy. She's an industry thought leader, TEDx speaker, and author of Between the Spreadsheets, Classifying and Fixing Dirty Data. She is also the creator of the COAT philosophy. Are you going to be talking about that today?
I absolutely am.
All right, great. And Susan is extremely passionate about helping you find the value in cleaning your dirty data and raises awareness of the consequences of ignoring issues through her blogs, her vlogs, her webinars, and her speaking engagements. So without further ado, I know I delayed this a little bit too long. I probably lost a lot of you already. Let me turn it over to Susan, and I'm going to go mute. Welcome, Susan. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Matt. And you'll be pleased to know that I'm having that bio reworded so that people after you will not have to so much. So hi, everybody. I can see we have got people from all over the world on. Thank you so much for taking your time to join me today, this evening, this afternoon, wherever you are. I'm going to be talking about fixing dirty data in AI and ML, and many of you will be experts and specialists in this area. I'm going to break it to you now. I don't do any coding. I don't do any AI or ML work myself, but I do have a superpower.
When you think of superheroes, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Men in tights? Women with superhuman strength?
Sure.
Capes? Lots of superheroes wear capes, but only one wears a coat. A data coat. By day, she's Susan Walsh, but when dirty data rears its ugly head, she becomes the classification guru. What are the classification guru's superpowers? Consistency, organization, accuracy, and trust. With help from her good friend and trusty sidekick, the data whisperer.
Hi, Scott.
The classification guru wages war against dirty data, fighting her sworn enemies, misclassification, duplicate, and the typonator. It's the classification guru's job to clean up the mean streets of Excel City.
That was bang out of order.
So, when you're in Excel hell, don't let dirty data get you down. Call the classification guru.
So that's my superpowers, and today I am going to tell you a little bit more about those and also how you can get the best out of your AI ML work by looking at data in a little bit of a different way. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about myself. I'm going to talk about what is dirty data, what are the consequences of that dirty data, and then how can you ensure that data accuracy once you've got it. Then I'm going to go through with an Excel file, and I'm going to do a live demo of how you can spot check data in Excel. And you might be thinking, oh my goodness, Excel, but it's a tool that we all have. Everyone else is using different tools. This is something we all have in common, and it's something that is really easily accessible. Then I'm going to give you a quick summary, and if you're really lucky, you might get another video at the end. So let's start with a little bit about myself. I have quite a unique perspective when it comes to data because I fell into it by accident. I had a whole career in sales in FMCG blue chip companies. I did something completely different. And then I set up a business with a women's clothing shop, and that didn't work out either. So I accidentally got a job because I needed one doing some spend data classification for a spend analytics company. And that's where I really found my love for data. I took to classifying data naturally, and the tool they were using, I could use it, and I was really fast and accurate. It was just a joy to do. It didn't feel like work. But after 5 years, I really wanted to do more of the same, but in a different environment. And I didn't know where I could get a job. So the first thing I did was I set up the Classification Guru, which will be 5 years old in June. And I have been working across all countries, languages, industries. I've been classifying and normalizing data sets from hundreds of rows to millions of rows. I've been building customized taxonomies, cleaning suppliers, cleaning databases. And the thing that I'm most proud of is I have written a book, Between the Spreadsheets, Classifying and Fixing Dirty Data. And this is literally a Bible for anyone who wants to clean data in Excel. It covers off a lot of what we're going to talk about today, but in more detail. So why do you need to do it? What happens when you don't? What are the practical ways of doing it? What's the best way to normalize suppliers? What's the best way to classify them? What about cleansing them in a database in Excel? How can you do that efficiently? So that's a little bit about me, but let's get on to the good stuff. What is dirty data? And depending on where you are working, that might be different things to different people. But it can be things like misspelt words. I see that all the time in description columns. I see it in product descriptions, products that have been set up on systems, CRM systems, people's names, company names. It's everywhere. And then there's things like incorrect descriptions too, which when you're using AI and ML, if you don't have those descriptions right, it's going to be learning from the wrong stuff. And then there's things like missing codes. Information might just be missing, and then you could end up having multiple versions of the same product. And Andre, I can see your question. You're asking what is my education. I have absolutely no data science background. Everything I have learned has been on the job, mostly self-taught, to be honest. So everything I know, I've just learned because I've needed to do it. And I'll tell you all about that later on. And then we've got information or data in the wrong columns. And you see this a lot with address data. So how often have you seen the zip or postal code in the town or city column, or the state or the county is missing? The whole address is in one cell rather than split over several columns. There's no consistency. It can cause a lot of problems. And what if there are commas to separate some of the lines, but not all of the lines? It can cause a disaster. And then, you know, increasingly we're becoming a global world where everybody is working together on a global scale, but we're all talking in different languages and units of measure. Is it liters? And is that liter spelled US, North America way or European way? And of course, like kilometers, or is it inches, meters, centimeters? Not everybody's working in the same units of measure, and it's not always clear, so it can cause a lot of problems. And the same with currency issues as well. If you're working with a lot of financial information, if you don't know you're working in different currencies, it can skew the numbers massively. And then formatting issues. So something that I would really love for you to do right now is type into the comments box how you format your date, because everybody is doing it differently. You can have people in the same office who format their dates differently. You can have people in the same company. You can have people globally who are all doing it different. And, you know, there's a huge difference between the North American way and the European way. But even between all that, there is such a difference in the format. And I know we've got a bit of a delay, but I'd be really keen to see just some of the dates that come through, because when they start scrolling, you'll see there's loads of different versions. Here we go. Yeah. And do you use dots, dashes, slashes, or no separators? I mean, the dilemma goes on and on and on. And, you know, I hear often about ISO 8601, but most people are not using it. So keep on putting those dates in, because that'll show my exact point. And again, if you don't know that you're working with different countries' date systems, then you might not get documents to match up because the dates are different. They're the same, but they're just in a different format. So it can cause a lot of problems. And all of those things can end up causing our good old friends, the duplicates. I see these in pretty much every file I work with. And it doesn't matter how you get rid of them, they will be there and they'll always keep appearing. So in my world, I am working with text data. So I'm classifying data, but even people can get it wrong. So for example, here's an example of LinkedIn. That's how I met most of my friends now, my business connections, that well-known networking, training, recruitment website. Somebody classed it as restaurants because the description said restaurant. And that's something that's so important with AI, ML, all these automation tools. You can't focus in on a single cell or a single row or a single column. You have to look at the data in context, because had you just looked at the description, then technically classification of restaurant would be right. But we all know the supplier, LinkedIn. We know that that's not what they do. So we need that context to have a look at it. And the same again for another example. Again, these are real life examples of data that I have worked with. I had a client who had Tinder Corporation as their supplier. Now, they're a well-known charity in the UK, and as soon as I saw it, I thought there's no way they would be paying money to Tinder, not even for advertising. And of course, then the description says additional data cabling. Now, a lot of our minds would automatically reject the description because we think we know who Tinder is. But actually, there's a Tinder Corporation Limited here in the UK, and they're an IT services company. So again, it's so important to use the context of the data. And of course, you can't see this when you're using AI, ML, or any kind of data science tools. How are you going to know about this? Well, keep on watching and I'll show you some tricks. And it's the same with supplier normalization. So I am guilty of normalizing Grainger to all the same supplier, but actually there's Grainger UK and there's Grainger USA, and they do two very different things. And had I looked at the context and the rest of the data, I would have known that. So again, you can't see this in AI ML. How are you supposed to know if it's wrong and fix it so that the machine learning, the AI can learn from this? Again, keep watching and I'll show you some tips. So I just showed you some examples of text where there's some things that are wrong. And it's really easy for me to show you and pull out a couple of lines here or there. And you might think, well, you know, it's thousands of rows, hundreds of thousands, millions of rows of data. How am I expected to know this and find this out? Well, obviously, you're not expected to know everything, and that's when maybe pairing up with an expert in that particular area of data is helpful. But again, I've got tips in my little tool bag, my data tool bag, so don't worry about that. So if we wanted to prevent these things from happening so that we don't have to fix it in the data set, in the AI, in the machine learning, let's not assume that when we're putting something in, we know what it is. Always use the data for context. You know, if it was the kind of data that we've just looked at, look at the vendor and the description, maybe even the value might help. You know, when I was talking about currency earlier, I had a file where all the taxes were coming up at $500, and, you know, it might be acceptable to have one tax at $500 as a one-off, but to have all of them, it suddenly became apparent that the currency conversion had gone wrong. So these things can help guide you and give you information. And then, would the product or company that you're working for use this service or this information or this product? That's always a good help. And look at the values, like I was saying. They can help you guide with classification, with tidying, with whatever you need. And you know what? Googling is absolutely 100% a skill. And I would say I'm really good at it. And if you don't know, get on Google and check. If it, you know, whatever it is, just go and have a look. And does that website then match what you have in your data, or is it something different? Do you need to dig a little bit further? Because sometimes you have like a company name, but it's different things in different countries, as I've explained. So I'm just having a quick look at the comments. We've got a comment from Glenn: wherever possible, use email or qualified domain names, which are guaranteed to be globally unique. Great tip, thanks very much. So why should we even bother about this? I mean, isn't it someone else's problem? Well, first of all, it's going to save you time fixing dirty data, not just your colleagues, but you personally. It's going to make your life easier. It's going to be costly to rectify if it's wrong. Imagine you've built this wonderful new tool and you're running everything through and it's not working because the data wasn't clean when you put it in. You're going to have to start again or do a whole chunk of it all over. And that's going to cost a lot of money from a hardware or software perspective or a team hours perspective. And time again, it's going to cost you time. And having that data incorrect and not checking it and then running anything is going to affect decision-making processes. Imagine your company is making decisions on budgets, resources, bonuses, and they don't have the right information. You could personally be missing out. So it's really important that we all look after our data. And like I say, it's going to impact all the areas of the business, not just somebody in IT, somebody in finance. You know, it's going to impact everybody. And it's wasted money. You're throwing it up against the wall. That could be your bonus money that has been thrown up against the wall because somebody didn't check the data before you ran something. And then over in Europe, in the UK, we have GDPR. So if you have personal information and it's not right, you're in breach of GDPR. It's not just about holding that data securely, it's about holding the right information and only the information that you need. So your company could be subject to huge fines if they're in breach of that. And that could cause reputational damage. And that's much harder to fix than just paying someone to sort some clean, dirty data out. So it's worth considering. And yeah, dirty data just makes your life more difficult, and nobody wants that. But, you know, they're all kind of negative things, really, aren't they? I mean, is there any kind of incentives, you know, good things that can come from cleaning dirty data? Well, of course there are, and it's increased profitability. So imagine you have clean data, it takes you half the time to run a project now. Your company's still charging whoever out at the same price, but you're now taking half the time. That's the money saved. That could be your bonus again. You know, it's things like that that can really make a difference. And actually, it might, you know, ease your workload. You might have 100 million things on right now, and just by having clean data, helping things run more smoothly, that's making your day-to-day work life a lot easier. So business-wise, I mean, we know what the consequences of dirty data are if a script doesn't work or the output is wrong. You know, we all know, but what are the consequences wider to the business? So for example, you might want to do some reporting. Are you making the cost savings the best cost savings you possibly can? Do you have that information? Are you making the best supplier negotiations? Are you rationalizing your suppliers or your customers in the data or products? Is it affecting your forecasting because the historical data is dirty and actually you're making possibly predictive analytics or people analytics, you know, based on the wrong information? Budgets is going to affect, we talked about that already. And also things like, how about targeting the right customers? So when you have CRM systems, sales and marketing departments, you might have somebody in there with old addresses, old emails. You might be sending the same thing out by mail to the same person a couple of different times. You are throwing money out the window. By having that clean data, you can make sure you're being as efficient as possible. And also, it doesn't look good from a reputational point of view to your potential client or customer if you're sending them multiple versions of the same thing. You know, if they can't manage their data, how are they going to help me? Let's see, someone else. No questions, but get them in if you've got any. Or feedback, you know, how do you find dirty data? Is this relatable to you? Do you ever see this side of it, you know, or are you stuck in working with the code and the machines? You don't really ever know what happens to it. And it could affect things like shipping the correct products. Imagine if you have the wrong dimensions. And I heard a story about TVs where somebody, I think it was supposed to be, instead of a meter by a meter, it was a centimeter by a centimeter. And so they thought they could get a lot more TVs on the truck than they could. And then that affected deliveries. There could be late delivery charges by the supplier at the other end. It could cost money to get stuff back if it's wrong. It all costs money and time and effort. But it's not just that, it's also in the visualization side of things. So analytics, it can really have an impact. So something that I do a lot is I normalize suppliers. Now, this is not a parent-child financial relationship. This is just taking all the IBMs and putting them as IBM, all the Dells as Dell. So this is an example of an unnormalized set of data. As you can see, there's a whole list there and there's a lot of different names, but they're all kind of similar. When that's normalized, you can see there's actually only 4 different suppliers and the value assigned to those, and it could be production rates, it could be forecast, it could be anything. When you look at that, I'll go back side by side here. You can see the values change and decisions are being made on that information. So it's really important to get it right. And also, from my point of view, from a classification point of view, if I normalize the suppliers first, if I classify by the normalized suppliers, it can cut the time down because, for example, I had a client with 41,000 suppliers and I normalized it down to 34,000. That's a lot less suppliers to classify individually because they're grouped together under the normalized name. So it makes it more efficient. And that's what I'm all about, lots of efficiencies. And then, of course, technology implementation. I'm sure we've all seen this. Data cleaning, cleansing is often neglected. ERPs, CRM systems, errors are only discovered post-implementation. Staff lose faith in the data. They claim it's disengaged, doesn't work, don't trust it because it's wrong. If you're building the tools yourself, you might have even been blamed for it, but it's not your fault. It's the dirty data. And it can be an awful lot of money to fix that. And you have to then hope that if you do fix it, the staff will readopt that technology. Do they still have trust in that system? Because quite often projects can be abandoned. And we're not talking hundreds of or thousands even of pounds, euros, or dollars. We're talking millions sometimes. So it can be hugely costly. Raphael, I'm just looking at your question. Nope, you will be getting some tips. You don't have to buy the book, but the book will give you more detail. I would not tease you like that. I promise we'll get to that. And then also we'll have a Q&A section at the end as well, so you can ask me lots of questions. So AI, machine learning, automation, yeah. Data must be cleansed and prepared beforehand. The AI is learning from training data sets. Whatever you put in comes out. If it's learning the wrong thing, the output is going to be wrong. Same with ML, any kind of coding. If you're using dirty data to build those codes and rules, then it's going to be wrong. And it really is like they say, it's the old adage of rubbish in and rubbish out. And he's not too happy about it. So this is all great and well, but how can you try to help ensure that the data is going to be accurate? Well, first of all, the thing is that, I'm going to be honest, there is no quick fix, there's no magic button, and there is no software that's going to do it. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's up to you to do it, but working with someone who has knowledge in the area will help. Anything new should really be looked at by a person, and preferably somebody who's an expert in that area. The whole organization is responsible for data quality, not just you, not just me, not just your boss, everybody, from the receptionist to the sales and marketing team to the people inputting products to whoever. Data is everybody's responsibility, not just data people. And then you need to agree some common standards, terms, processes, like what is a customer? Because in different parts of the business, that can mean a different thing. What about dates? Are we all going to start using the same date format? What process are we using? Are we all working in the same way? Because if we all are, it's going to smooth this process out, make things easier for you, and give you better data quality. But the real secret to all of this is maintaining and refreshing your data. So it's not good enough just to fix it. You have to go back and look at it regularly to make sure that it's not changed, because guess what? People can go in and change their minds, delete things, accidentally cut and paste over other things. They can cause a whole load of chaos. And if you're not checking it, you're not going to know. And that wonderful data that you're using to build your training data sets is going to be all wrong. And spot checking will help with that too, just to make sure that everything is as it should be. But, we know as data professionals what we need to do. But how can we get our colleagues to get on board with it too? Well, the first thing I say is you need to make sure your data has its coat on. And what does that mean? Well, it means, firstly, that your data needs to be consistent. So is everybody using the same process, the same terminology, all those things we just talked about? Is everybody working the same way? And is it organized? So think of a messy closet. You know, you threw your favorite top in there last week and now you need it and you're going to have to scramble around in there to find it. And when you do, it's going to be crumpled and you're probably going to need to iron it and you might not even be able to wear it because it's in such a mess. If you had organized your clothes and hung them up and put them into like tops, trousers, even by color if you want, if you're like me, you would have been able to just go in, take that top out and off you go. And data is very much the same as that. So before you start all these processes, categorize it by country, by region, by department, by person, by anything you want to help you manage your data and find it easily. And then it needs to be accurate. And of course, that's different things to different people. So have a look at what the best version of accuracy is for the specific data that you're working with. You know, if it's finance data, you have to be 100% accurate. But if it's filling in customer forms, you know, maybe as long as you fill in 80% of the information, that's good enough. So talk with your colleagues around that. And then once you have all those things, you have trustworthy data. And that is really, really important because you want the trust of the business, your colleagues, all of those people to have faith that the data that you provide them with is accurate. I'm just having a look here. I do not have a recommendation on cleaning audio files. That sounds like one of the most thankless jobs in the world. And I give all credit to anybody who can do that. So now we're going to get to the good stuff, for some of you anyway. How to maintain and spot check that data. So what I'm going to do is I am going to pull over my Excel sheets and hopefully you can see that. Let me know if you can see that, if it's a good enough size for you, and then we can get going. I'd also be really interested to find out if you find you get a lot of grief from within your organization if you are working with data because they're telling you the work you've done is wrong, whereas actually it's the dirty data. Okay, I can't see anything. So I am going to go ahead and start talking. Oh, got a comment. Thank you very much. So this is a sample data, a pretend classification, normalized supplier data in Excel. And the first thing that I want to do is, you know, this is not a massive list. Normally there would be hundreds and thousands of rows. What I have is my supplier name, then I've normalized it, and then I've got a description of what the cost is. And, you know, if this is trying to relate it to your work, it could be a product code and a product description that you might want to work with. It could be people's names and addresses that you're trying to figure out if you've got more than one version of that. This can be applied to lots of different things. And I'll leave my details at the end. You can scan a QR code to connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you want some slides on everything I'm going through, then I can happily send them to you. So first of all, I'm going to create a good old-fashioned pivot table. So let's do that. And the first thing that I'm going to do is, if I have normalized my suppliers, I want to check that they're okay. So I'm going to have a look at supplier name and normalized name. And the first thing I'm going to think is, well, this is not helpful for me at all. So the next thing I'm going to do is go to the design tab, and I'm going to go to report layout, and I'm going to choose tabular form. And question, are most people using Excel? A lot of people are using Excel, more than you would realize. And a lot of companies have some great tools, but people go back to Excel. Personally, I'm using a tool called Omniscope, which is a data visualization and modeling tool. Everything I'm showing you now is kind of a reverse engineered version of what I do in Omniscope. Oh my goodness, 60% duplicates. Wow. Oh, I feel for you. So if you had all those duplicates, and I know that if you have a really large data set, that working with Excel is really painful. So again, if you have to work in Excel with large data, I wouldn't normally suggest this, but try and chop it up by category, by region, by country, to just make it into smaller manageable chunks for Excel. And actually, what I'm about to show you, you could even translate into the tools that you're using. So it's, you know, there are other ways to do it more efficiently. And then, okay, it's still not looking great. So what I need to do is I need to take my subtotals off, and I need to take my grand totals off. So now that is looking a lot better. So I can see that for each supplier, nope, here we go. So DHL and DHL Express here. Okay, yeah, and then we've got one. So that's all good. So I can do a quick check to make sure that's all right. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is if I was to look at the categorization, which will be a better example for you. So let's just take the supplier name away. We're going to use the normalized name, and then we're going to use the code, segment, family, class, and commodity. Now, what I can see from here is that I have my list of suppliers, and then I can see all the different types of classification against it. Now, if I wanted to look at it at just a top supplier level, I can see, okay, well, I would expect that kind of number of different classifications from this supplier. British Gas, okay, there's 3 different types of utilities there. So let's have a look at that. Pull this in a bit. Okay, so I can see we've got electric. Okay, that's good. Then I can see in Dell, we've got computer equipment, software, computer services. That looks good. DHL, we've got mail and cargo and management advisory services. So again, if you have an idea of the data you're working with, this will be easier to do. If you don't, then it's worth going through it with potentially someone who works with the data. And again, I'm just looking down, but also I probably need the descriptions to help me here. So what I would do is I would add that in as well. So where's my description? Here we go. And where are you, description? We need to move you up. There we go. So now I can start to look at the description, and actually I don't really need the code, so I'm just going to hide that to save some space. I can start to look at, and actually level 3 is probably the more interesting one. So we've got taxi, we've got apples, bananas, beef, etc. Now, here we go. Now, where we saw British Gas earlier, it looked okay having electric utilities, but actually here the description says gas. So I would need to go into the raw data and change that. Now, it's a bit of a faff clicking between the tabs. So what I'm going to do is go to View. I'm going to add a window, new window. and it's going to create two versions of the same tab. And then I'm going to go back to view, and I'm going to arrange all, and I want to view them vertically. Who's laughing at my pivot tables and VLOOKUPs? I don't use them myself. Again, I'm just using a tool that's universal to everybody, that we all know. And that is why I'm using pivot tables and VLOOKUPs. And I just need to check this little question. What would I recommend to master Excel? That is a really good question. I have been on a number of courses when I've been in corporate life to do Excel courses, and I found that none of them helped me because they were just showing me the functions and how to use them. They weren't showing me how to use them in the context of my job. So actually, rather than trying to learn it all, I would say try and just master what you need for the job that you're doing. So, you know, go and Google ways, look at YouTube videos, and do it that way. Or, you know, if you can get a consultant in that could work with you, find out what you're doing, and then tell you what you need, that would be a better way than wasting your money on a generic course that probably 90% of it you're not going to use. That's certainly what I found when I had done some courses. You know, I left the building and I forgot it all. So let's arrange these vertically. So now you can see I've got them against alongside each other. But what I want to do is I want to change this one to the original raw data. Because if I have a large list in my pivot table, scrolling down and flipping back and forward is going to take forever. Whereas I can see here, if I go to British Gas, I know that there's some gas there. So I don't want that in here. I want to go to British Gas, and look, we've actually got 3 different columns with gas in it. So I would change this. And obviously I'd have a taxonomy that I'd be using, but for the purposes of this, I'm just going to overwrite it so that you can see and spell properly too. That might be helpful. So now I've updated that. I want to go back to my pivot table because I don't want to keep looking over the same things that I've corrected. So if I go to the data tab and click on refresh all, that has now changed my gas to gas. So I'm happy. And then I would just go down and go through and check again. Here there's different classifications, so I would go through and check those. I would change it in here, and then I would go back and I would refresh the data to update it and change it. And that is a really quick, really basic pit stop of just checking data in Excel. There is so much more that I do, but literally I've done a 4-hour course on just normalization, classification, and cleansing data in Excel. So we could talk about this till goodness knows when. So that's a quick summary. If anyone wants me to go over any part of that, I can do that again at the end. But if we just summarize over everything that we've just talked about, because I think I've filled your brain with quite a lot there. Accurate data is critical to every part of the business. And there are no shortcuts. I'm sorry, but there's none. I've tried to find them. They don't exist. You have to put that effort in. But if you do it at the beginning, it will save you so much pain and effort further down the line. And, know and maintain your data. And, even if, you don't need to know it inside out, but just become familiar with it, because it will be suddenly very easy to start to know when things kind of don't look right, and it could be things like the taxes. You're looking at a file and you see $500 taxes and you're thinking that's not quite right. Or, you might have product codes and all the apples start with a 5 and then all the bananas start with a 7. and one of the apples has a 7 code, not a 5 code, something like that. It might just trigger something in you, but you're only going to know that if you kind of look at the data regularly. And you need to agree those common standards and define what is a customer, what unit of measure are we using, what dates are we using, or do we need 2 columns just to make sure so that there's no confusion over it, and get everybody involved. If you are working in data science, work with the people who are going to be using your output. Let them help you make the best thing you can. Let them guide you and let you know what is right and what is wrong. And then you have to remember, like everybody has to remember, you have to make sure your data has its coat on. And if you need a bit of a reminder on what that is, then this might help.
Are you leaving your data out in the cold? You wouldn't go out into sub-zero temperatures without the correct protection, so why do so many companies forget to protect their data? Unprotected data can lead to bad business decisions that cost money and put jobs at risk. That's why your data needs its coat on. This means making sure your data is consistent, organized, accurate, and trustworthy. Consistent means using the same standards, terms, and classifications company-wide. Organized data makes it easier to find. Think of it like a messy closet. It can be difficult to find what you're after, even when you know it's in there. When organized correctly, it becomes easier to find what we want. Data should be accurate, which can mean different things to different people, but at its most basic level, accurate data is correct. And finally, data should be trustworthy. This is critical. If your team can't trust the data, they might not use it. And business decisions around jobs, staffing, and budgets are all based on data, so it's got to be right. Like any coat, there are differences in the quality of data services out there. If you buy a cheap coat, it might not be waterproof or protect you enough, and it won't last more than 1 season. If you don't invest in good quality data services, you will end up paying twice as much, if not more in the long run, to fix the earlier mistakes. If you'd like to speak to an expert about data in your own business, visit theclassificationguru.com to find out more.
And that was my presentation. If you scan this QR code, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I post a lot about data and lots of other topics that are vaguely related to data. A lot of discussions and lots of tips as well. The book Between the Spreadsheets goes into way more in-depth detail than what we've covered off today. There's just not enough time in the day. And then I am going to go through and have a look at some questions now. If you would like me to go over any of the work that I did in the Excel, I'm more than happy to do that as well. But I look forward to answering some questions from you. So let's just keep this up for a second. And I did see somebody asking about normalization. So let me just, how would I normalize the name? So let me share the Excel and I'll just show you because it's probably easier, to be honest. So this is, let me copy this into a new tab. So you're getting some sneak peeks of extra that's in the book here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I will never overwrite the original data. I will always create a new column. And the first thing that I'm going to do is when I am normalizing, I like to have everything in capital letters because it's much easier to read when it's all the same size. For some reason, it doesn't quite work the same when it's all lowercase. But find a way that works for you. That's what I would say. So the first thing I'm going to do is just an equals upper formula to get this in caps. And there we can see, and then I'm just going to click on my little thing there, and that is looking good. So now I can start to normalize. The first thing I'm going to do before I do that is I'm going to make sure that I copy and paste special values because otherwise it won't let me do anything. So let's paste those as values. And if I click in the cell, that's now text. So that's perfect. And I know this isn't even real, but I can't help myself. I have to make it bold. So as you can see, I would start to scroll down the names and look for common suffixes at the end, like LTD, Limited, Inc. There's, or even Express, UK Limited, etc. Now, again, there's whole pages and tables of this in the book, but you have to be really careful about removing the suffixes, because quite often what you're removing could be part of another word. So for example, you might think it's safe to just do a Control F, search and replace on limited. But you'd be amazed at the number of companies whose name is something unlimited or unlimited something. And then if you do a search and replace on that, what happens is you end up with the company name just un. So you have to be really careful and do certain things to check all that. But like really simplistically, in the short time we've got, I know that limited is a good one to do, but I also saw UK limited. So what I would do is remove the UK limiteds first and then the limiteds. Because if I take the limiteds out first, it's going to leave the UK. And again, if I try and do a search and replace on the UK, that's going to cause lots of problems. So if I do UK LTD and just replace all, there we go, 14 replacements. And then if I change that now to LTD and replace those, there we go, they're gone. So that's 2. So, and that is how I would do it systematically. And there's lots of other tricks of the trade. As I say, it would take too long to go through them, but that is literally how, and there are certain combinations at the end of supplier names that you can remove without having to worry about taking other parts of other words. So for example, GmbH for all the DACH region companies, that's easy enough, or G.M.B.H, and you have to do them in a certain order to make sure you get rid of them. Comma space Inc full stop, that's another one that you can use, or Inc full stop. As long as it's fairly unique, you can be safe, and just be cautious with it. So that is what I would do with a very quick whistle stop tour of normalization. So let's see, have we got any more questions? Oh, Google Sheets versus Excel. The feedback that I'm seeing is feedback I've heard from other people, which is Google Sheets is better for sharing, but Excel has more functionality. But I have to say, I've tried sharing sheets in Excel, and that can be tricky.
Yeah, Susan, I think there was also a question about, the earlier question that was asked about the most important thing when learning Excel. I think you might have answered it, but I like that one response that they had about pivot tables and VLOOKUPs. Those seem to be 2 key things that you do quite often, and I would imagine most people would need.
I would say so. And again, it's about learning it in the context of how you're going to use it. And actually, I do plan to do more content on my YouTube channel over the coming months on concatenates. That's another one I use quite a lot of. VLOOKUPs, pivot tables, because we have to make it accessible to everyone. Like, we all know Excel's pants for this kind of stuff, that there's tools that can do it much better. You can press a button, but not everybody has access to that. So it's about trying to make it as usable for everybody as possible. The software that I use, I can deduplicate at the press of a button. I merge things together with a couple of blocks. Don't have to worry about upper lowercase or extra spaces and not matching. It does it all for me. It's magical, but it also costs a lot of money. Not everyone has access to that. So yeah, it's a necessary evil. And actually, you know what, I say that, but there are some things where it's just super easy and super quick to go into Excel and do something. Text to columns is the perfect example. Pop it in, press the button, and you're done. It's sometimes the simplest way is the best. We don't need to over-engineer everything. And I think having a mixture of tools is the best way to do it. And not every tool will be right for every person or every job. I think it really depends on what you're doing. You have to figure that out.
I think there's a couple of more new questions that just came in. And I know we only have a few minutes, so maybe you want to do the speed round version.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's a bad practice to remove all the duplicates. It's not bad practice to remove them all. I think you have to be careful not to lose any of the data. So again, in my tool, I would merge the lines together to make sure that the integrity of the data was still the same. But, just deleting willy-nilly, that's not a good approach. That's going to cause more problems. If I have a data set of user input that contains lots of duplicates, no, we've done that one. What about using Power Query? I guilty because I don't work in Excel. I have not learned Power Query. However, I know that it does have some amazing functionality. So I would definitely recommend that if you get the chance to go and learn it. And actually that would probably help with some of the stuff that I've showed you as well. But again, at its most basic level, I want to talk to people and show people that anyone could walk off the street and do this, and then if you want to learn a bit more, start using Power Query, and then maybe you want to go into Power BI. There's lots of different steps up. There's something to be learned that a lot of users are saying the same thing, but then again, the duplicates aren't always useful. Duplicates happen all the time because people are not searching for them properly. They've been misspelled. People have different opinions, or it could be cheating the system. If you're in sales and you get targeted on setting up new accounts, then maybe you're just set up this account again, but with a slightly different name. People cheat the system, it happens. You just have to maintain it and spot check it and regularly look at it. Don't just leave it, and it'll be much better. And then very quickly, in my 5 years, how have client attitudes to data quality changed? How have they become more aware? Oh my goodness, so much. So when I started, everyone said I was daft. Setting up a business, cleaning data, nobody's going to want that. And I was like, I see this all the time. I can tell you people do. And the attitudes have absolutely changed. Getting sign off from businesses to actually pay for my services is still pretty ropey, but we're definitely getting there. And that's partly why I wrote the book as well. Get it out there. Let's generate some noise around it. Make it a thing.
Great. It's great. I think it's definitely an industry that's been booming over the past 10, 15 years for sure. So,
but isn't it interesting that all this new tech that comes out, and what do we need more of than ever? People to clean the data.
Yeah, it really speaks to the philosophy that we espouse here at Fourth Brain and Andrew Ng also, the whole notion of data-centric AI, where, the data really, it's critical.
But we need to value that process a lot more as well. I think it's been undervalued for a number of years. It's like the trash man of the data world. If nobody came and collected the trash, we'd all have a social problem. Data's the same. Exactly.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for spending an hour of your time. It's great information. This session has been recorded, and for anyone that's interested, it'll become available by tomorrow, maybe sooner, but certainly by tomorrow. And you can view it right here on YouTube again. So thank you all. Susan, again, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
It's been absolutely my pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. And thanks for all your questions.
Thank you. Everyone have a great day.